Okay, so you've listened to a couple of short lectures where I've talked about the qualities of your delivery that I'll be looking for. And now what I want to do is look at a couple example speeches. You can see these in your course in the delivery module. They're labeled example 1 and example 2. What I'm going to do is play each of these videos in this lecture. After a while, I'll pause it and then talk through some of the things they're doing well and the things they need to improve on. And depending on the quality of the video that you're viewing right now, it might be easier to pause this video and then watch the actual speech on Canvas on your computer. So actually pause this video and then open up this link in your Canvas course, watch it, and then come back to my video, restart it, and listen to what I have to say about it. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay, so let's watch the first video.
Hello class, my name is Kevin Harris and I believe in two of everything. 2 cars, $2 for every $1. 2 cute little puppies that you can take for walks on the beaches with your girlfriend. 2 girlfriends. You youngster, what would you like to have 2 of?
2 girlfriends.
Oh, in a perfect world. How about you? 2 cars? 2 cars? Do you have 2 cars? I ask. You don't have 2 cars. Do you know why you don't have 2 cars? Because by simple philosophy, 1 equals 2 equals false. Without cloning. But with cloning, check this out. 1 plus 1 equals 2 equals 2 equals true. This is philosophy, my friends. This and 3 other things are the benefits of cloning. Those 3 other things are food, dinosaurs, you, FADO, it's an acronym. Know it, use it, live it. Cool, it's another acronym. So without further ado, let's go straight into the first letter. Let me write this down so you don't forget it. Food. I'm sure you guys all heard the lie.
Okay, so that's probably enough of this speech. If you watch the full speech, you'll see some of the good features of this student's delivery. He definitely has vocal variety. He is excited to give his speech to the audience, it seems like, and you can hear the changes in volume, rate, pitch. He uses pauses effectively. I'll talk about that a little bit more in a second. But in terms of vocal variety and just enthusiasm, this is actually a really good example. Also, it's a little bit difficult to judge eye contact on these videos, but first of all, he's not using notes, so that's one way that we can judge, is he making more or less eye contact. Second of all, he appears to be looking around the room. And third of all, I have the sense that he's actually making contact with people in the audience. So this is a really good example of vocal variety and eye contact. And as I said in the earlier lectures, even though the student does have some vocal pauses, if I was grading the speech, I wouldn't have any problem with his pausing because of the enthusiasm and the eye contact. The other thing I wanted to note about pauses, if you scroll back and rewatch where he writes on the board, the 1 equals 2 equals false, and the 1 plus 1 equals 2 equals 2 equals true, you'll notice that he pauses differently than what I just did in order for you to kind of follow what he's doing. So he says 1 equals 2 equals false. And then he says 1 plus 1 equals 2 equals 2 equals true. So the difference in pausing, although it might be a little bit subtle, is that's a really good example. So if you're teaching somebody how to do a math problem as you're writing it out, you're just not going to say everything you're writing at the same rate. You're going to pause. So you're going to say 1 plus 1 equals, and give them a chance to think about that, and then you might write the answer to. So that's a really specific example of purposeful pauses. A couple of things that I would note for this student to work on improving. First, his personal appearance is fine, but the way he's wearing the backpack looks a little strange. If you watch the whole speech, you'll see what he's doing there. But if I was grading this, I would have given him a note to figure out a better way to pull the dinosaur out of the backpack. And the other thing, I don't know if the resolution on your screen is good enough to see this, but he's chewing gum in his speech. And as I mentioned earlier, that's an automatic 1 for personal appearance. So he would probably be a little bit bummed out to find he didn't get a perfect score for personal appearance. Other than that, this is actually a really good example of a classroom speech where a student is enthusiastic, they sound excited about their topic, and they really engage the audience. The other note that I would give the student, if I was teaching him, would be the movements and gestures got a little distracting. He was clearly excited, enthusiastic, but you have to keep control of that because this isn't stand-up comedy, and so this is a presentation, and especially for our purposes, I would prefer if you stood relatively still with natural movements and gestures without running around the room or doing some of the extravagant gestures and movements he did. But for the highlight pieces that we're really looking at, eye contact, vocal variety, and pausing, this is a really good example. Now let's look at the second example. Again, this is just a speech I found on YouTube. This is not one of my students, and unfortunately the good example is a guy, the bad example is a woman. In the real world, typically the good examples are the women and the bad examples are the guys, so I'm giving us guys a little bit of payback on this one. So anyway, watch this video and then I'll give you some commentary on it.
Hi, I'm Emily Johnson, and I'm going to be talking about the different areas in the marketing industry. So the first area that I want to talk about is the direct marketer, which is like a position usually in a company such as Sony or Nike. For example, they'll have like a product manager who wants to create a concept of the product that they're trying to sell. Usually, however, the product manager won't be able to create the concept completely by themselves, so they usually have to outsource to an advertising agency. And then the advertising agency comes up with the actual concepts for the advertisement, to be put on TV and like a commercial or something like that. For example, companies like advertising agencies are usually large companies in big cities like New York City or Chicago or Los Angeles or something like that. So then after the advertising agency, there's the media and media selling.
Okay, that's enough of this one. The first thing I want to say about this example is that this is how a decent amount of students in public speaking classes look and sound when they're giving their speeches. So although it's easy to sit here now and watch this video and it's very clear that this isn't a great example of good delivery for a speech, be careful with that because you might end up looking and sounding just like this. So let's go through and just talk through some of the things. I think one of the biggest things I want you to see here is how her vocal variety is lacking and how much she's reading from her notes. And if you watch the whole video, you will see that she has moments where she stops reading, she looks up for a second and says a sentence or two, and immediately her voice sounds better. So that's one thing I wanted to note, that connection between eye contact and vocal variety. Also, I wanted to point out a couple things about her pausing. She had lots of vocal pauses, as I'm sure you noticed. Another thing she did that I really want to encourage you to be cognizant of is she seemed like she was sighing a lot during her speech, which is kind of a nonverbal way to express that you're not into it. So maybe at least controlling your contempt for having to do speeches by not sighing every couple minutes would be great. And also, she pauses silently in the wrong place quite a bit, and that really breaks the flow of the sentence she's saying. So if you watch this video back again, you can see examples of all three of the issues I said about pausing. Sometimes she pauses correctly, sometimes she pauses incorrectly, and sometimes she uses a lot of vocal pauses. You probably also noticed that she had distracting movements and gestures. If there's anything you noticed about the video, it was that the student was constantly running her fingers through her hair, pulling her hair, playing with her hair, but she was also pulling at her sleeves. She was shifting quite a bit. And so you can see the first video, I'm willing to take a little bit of the out of control movement and gesturing of that person because he was so into the speech. And in this case, because everything else isn't going so well, it's tough to take the movements and gestures because it all just becomes this package that's really distracting. So again, as I've been saying in all these lectures, watch this one, take a couple of notes. If you have any questions about something they did in the video and how I would grade it, post that in the CCQs and I will answer them as soon as possible. I've actually been lying to you in the past couple of videos. There's going to be one more video in which I'm going to talk about the methods of delivery and then give you some tips for practicing your speeches. So as soon as you get a chance, watch the last video and we'll wrap up the delivery section with that.